Hello everyone, my name is Techno and welcome to my video. So today we're going to be making VPC flow logs, and the whole purpose of VPC flow logs is so that you can check and see what traffic is coming from your EC2 instance and exiting out of your EC2 instance or vice versa. So if we take a look at our AWS console, you begin to notice that, well, obviously we need to create our VPCs. So in this drawing, what we have here are two VPCs. VPC 1 and VPC 2. We'll want to make sure that there's EC2 instances created in each VPC. You'll notice that the VPC CIDR is in the /16 block for both VPCs, one of them being the 10.0.0.0/16 and the other 192.168.0.0/16. So let's go ahead and create our first VPC. This is really easy. You just go to VPC and more. Call this whatever you like. I'm just calling this VPC 1. And the CIDR block is already how I like it, which is 10.0.0.0/16. We can ignore IPv6. And as far as the numbers of availability zones, I'm just keeping it as 1 because we're just going to be deleting this anyways. Number of public subnets, because I want to SSH into these EC2 instances, you'll want to make sure that you have at least a public subnet on each VPC. Private subnets, let's go ahead and set it to 0 because we're only creating one EC2 instance per VPC. NAT gateways, we can leave it as none. VPC endpoints, none as well. So let's go ahead and create this VPC. And you'll notice when you click on your VPC, this is the VPC that we just created. Now we have to do the same thing again, this time on VPC 2. You could test this out in a different region if you would like, but I'm just going to be putting it all into one region for connectivity reasons, and it's just much more easier that way for this. Okay, now we have created two VPCs. Our next step here is to create two EC2 instances, one in VPC 1 and the other in VPC 2. So click on EC2. And you can either type it inside the search bar here and then bookmark it, so that way in future cases you can go ahead and just click on this bookmark right here. Then we're going to go on to instances. Launch instance at the top right of your corner. Call this EC2 1. Amazon Linux, so you can just leave it as default. We don't need to worry about it. Free tier. Now, this is for, as far as key pair goes, I would recommend you to create a key pair if you haven't done so already. So in this case, I'm using my laptop, so I haven't actually created a key pair for this particular device yet. So I'm just going to create one and click on RSA, call this demo key, and then we're going to create key pair. All right. So now that that's downloaded, we can go ahead and move further down. Network settings, we're going to click on edit, and by default, it will always go to your default VPC, but we want to change that. So let's go ahead and call this, replace this EC2 in VPC 1. It's in the public subnet. There are no additional subnets unless you created one public subnet and two private subnets, or even one private subnet as well. It's totally up to you, but in this demonstration, we're only creating one public subnet. Auto assign public IP. We're going to enable this public IP address so that way we can SSH into this EC2 instance. Otherwise, if it's a private IP, then we won't be able to SSH into it. Now, as far as security groups, there are two main important rules that you need in the security groups. If you already have security groups for your VPC, that's great. In this demonstration, we're only creating one additional security group for this particular VPC. We're going to call this demo SG for security group. In the description, we want to allow SSH and ICMP. Okay, now that we've allowed SSH, we can see that this looks correct, and we want to make sure that it's from anywhere, which is good. And the last thing we want is ICMP, so that way we can perform our ping tests. For the source type, we're going to make it to anywhere, so anyone can ping it. Call this test ICMP. And from here, you should be good to go and launch in the instance. So We're going to do the same exact thing like the VPC. We're going to replicate it on VPC 1 and put it onto VPC 2, so that way we have two instances that are basically identical. Happened, but let's see if it works. Nope. Okay, let's go ahead and modify that security group. I might have done something wrong, but let's go ahead and find out. I'm gonna place it as all ICMP. I think that was my mistake. So if I launch this instance again, we should run into no issues. Okay, looks like that was done successfully. So the next step is to create the VPC flow logs. So if you take a look at this article here, we have already established these two VPCs along with instances. Now, we still do need to modify the route table so that way they can communicate with each other. Once they communicate with each other, we're going to go ahead and establish that VPC flow log, so that way you can definitely see what's going on in between from the source to the destination or vice versa. So let's refresh this page. We should see EC2.1 and EC2.2. They're both initializing, but if we go ahead and click on connect, and we're using EC2 instance connect, we click on connect once again, we should be able to log on to this instance without a problem. Okay, so if you see this bird icon, or you can hit enter multiple times, that means that you're able to log into the EC2 instance successfully. So the next step is to open VPC on a new tab. And after you open it on a new tab, you can go click on subnets, and it'll tell you all of these subnets over here. I would assume that these are the subnets that we created, but if you would like to confirm that, you go back to your EC2 instance. Let's start off with EC2.1, then click on networking. Over here, you'll notice that there's a subnet ID. So you can open that in a new tab. So rather than going onto VPC, then to subnets, you can go from the EC2 instance, the networking tab, and then subnets. So that way you can identify exactly what subnet you're working with. So we're on this EC2's subnet, and if you open up this subnet, you'll notice that there's a route table that's associated with it. You open this on a new tab once again. And this time, you're going to modify the routes itself. So once you click on the route table, click on routes, edit routes, and you'll see that there's a section where you can add the 192.168.0.0/16 VPC CIDR. Once we add this CIDR, the next step is to make sure that this route table knows where to forward it out to. So to make sure that we're connecting from this VPC 1 to VPC 2, we're going to create a VPC peer, so that way they can communicate with each other. In order to do that, you need to go ahead and open VPC on a new tab. And this is where you can just type in VPC peering, create peering connection, and call this VPC peering. So the local VPC, let's go ahead and make the local one VPC number 1. And we want to make sure that this is in the same account. Unless you're connecting to a different account, then you would need to put in the destination account ID inside this tab over here where it says another account. The region is still staying the same, so we don't need to make any changes. And the VPC ID for the destination is VPC number 2. And then create that peering connection. So click on action, accept request, and then click on accept request. And if we go back to the subnet route table, if we go back onto the route table, we should now be able to see this peering connection. Add a new route, 192.168.0.0/16. Of course, keep in mind that if you're using on-prem devices, or if you are using this as production, instead of using a /16, be sure to be very specific with your routes. So maybe instead of using a /16, you can use a /24. Because if you use a /16, in the future, if you're ever trying to add additional routes, then all this /16 is going to be included, and it might get a little bit messy for you. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so click on peering connection, and now this is the VPC peering connection that we just created. Now, this is for one route table, which was done on VPC 1. We have to do the same exact thing, but on VPC 2. To do that, go back to EC2 number 2, networking, and go onto the subnet ID. Once we're on the subnet ID, click on the route table, open that in a new tab. And from here, we're going to modify that route table for the 10.10 or 10.0.0/16 route. Same thing, peering connection, and save. So now if we go ahead and start pinging from this particular EC2 instance from number 1 to number 2, we should now be able to see return. Okay, so now that we've seen the ICMP traffic is flowing through, we can 100% confirm that there is inbound and outbound traffic from this particular EC2 instance to the destination EC2 instance and back. So how do we confirm this? Well, this is done through VPC flow logs. If you go ahead and check EC2.1 or EC2 number 2, let's go ahead and create the VPC flow log on EC2 number 2, just because we've been focusing too much on EC2 number 1 or on VPC number 1. So let's go ahead and give some love to EC2 or VPC number 2. So click on details, go back to the VPC ID, and if we go ahead and go on this particular VPC, we can go ahead and click on flow logs. And then we're going to create the flow log, call this my flow log. The filter will be all, so that way you see both accept and reject messages. The aggregation interval will be 1 minute, so that way we have almost real-time traffic of what's happening. Because if you set it to 10 minutes, if we perform this test right now, we have to wait for an additional 10 more minutes just to get that log to show up on VPC flow logs. Now, you could send this to CloudWatch logs or to S3 bucket. I personally prefer to CloudWatch simply because there's already a user interface for that and it's a lot more easier. You could use S3 bucket, but you would use Amazon Athena, for example, to parse through all of those logs. Now, for the destination log group and IAM role, these are things that you need to create. But once you create it, it is set and done, and you don't need to do this anymore on this account that you created on because it's global. So what you would do is copy this tab or go onto a new AWS service. This will be going to the CloudWatch tab. So we're going to type in CloudWatch. On the left-hand side, click on Logs, Log Group. And then at the top right, we're going to create the log group. Let's call this CloudWatch-log group. Log group. You could set an expiration on this. So for example, let's say you want to get rid of it every day. I don't know why you would do that, but for testing purposes, go for it. Set the retention to either never, 1 day, 1 week, 2 weeks, doesn't matter. Click on create. Cool. Now that we have this done, it says CloudWatch log group configured. Over here, if we refresh on the destination log group, you should now see it. But we're only halfway there. We still need to create the IAM role. This is where it might take a little bit of time, but this is why I created this video, so you can walk through on how to create this IAM role and go from there. So this is the particular public documentation provided by AWS in order to create your VPC flow log. I'll go ahead and provide it in the description, so that way you can go ahead and copy and paste what you need on here. So if you scroll down, this is the first line we need, which will allow your IAM role to publish flow logs to CloudWatch. So copy this using this double square icon, or you can just copy the whole entire thing here. Go back to CloudWatch. We're gonna need to make another tab. So this one will be called IAM. Open that in a new tab. go on to policies on the left-hand side, create policy, and let's go ahead and call this, on the left-hand or on the right-hand side, click on JSON, delete everything and paste the new snippet. Click on next. The policy name will just be called publish _ to CloudWatch. Publish VPC logs to CloudWatch. And create policy. Now, we have a policy, but now we still are missing a role. So this is where you click on role on the left-hand side, create role, and over here, just click on EC2, scroll down, click on next. This is where we need to find the permission that we just created. So this is the role that I created, publish _ CloudWatch. We can go ahead and select this permission, click on next, and the role name will be called VPC _ flow logs. Now, keep in mind, once you go ahead and create this VPC flow log, it will be globally. So it doesn't matter what region you're in. If you want to create VPC flow logs in, say, US West 2, it already has this IAM role created, and you can use the same exact role. Just make sure you change the destination log group so that way you don't get confused on the logs. Click on create role. So now that we've created the role, we are almost done. Just go ahead and open up this flow log. Click on trust relationship. Edit that trust policy. And this is where we would want to go back to the AWS public documentation. Scroll all the way down over here where it says ensure that your role has the following trust policy. Copy it once again and paste or delete everything in this current trust policy and paste whatever was on the public documentation. Update the policy, and we are finally done. We created the IAM log, or we created the IAM role, and we created the destination log group. So if we go back to the CloudWatch tab, if we go back to the VPC flow log, we should now see CloudWatch log group, and now the IAM role. If we search it up, refresh this and search it up, VPC _ flow logs. Now that we both have the destination log group and the IAM role, we can go ahead and create that flow log. You can leave this log record format as default. Create the flow log, and we are done. So what we want to do now is send interesting traffic between the VPC1 and VPC2, or EC2-1 and EC2 number 2. Okay, so now that we're on this EC2 instance, let's go ahead and perform that same ping test. Keep in mind that this is from EC2 number 1 going to EC2 number 2. Okay, so if we go back to the flow logs, you can go ahead and go to VPC number 2 because that's where we created it. Go to flow logs, and you see how it says destination name? Go ahead and open that into a new tab. So my personal favorite way to take a look at logs is if you go on the left-hand side and click on Log Insight. This will take you exactly where you need to go to put in the source and destination filters and port or protocol depending on what you're looking for. VPC flow logs is such a powerful tool because whenever you're trying to identify where traffic is getting dropped, VPC flow logs will tell you, did we receive inbound connection or inbound traffic from wherever that instance was? If we don't see any logs, then in that case, there's something going on between the connection where it's not working. More than likely, it's probably just either a security group or a network ACL that could be dropping the traffic, or it could be because of your route table not being created, so your VPC doesn't know where to forward traffic. Now that that's done, we're going to select the log group that we created. And over here, we want to make sure that we have a filter. And these filters will tell us what is the source, what is the destination, what port or protocol is in use. So in this particular case, we're going to go onto line 4 and create a pipe. Type in filter src addr like and quotation marks. So this is very self-explanatory, but you're basically filtering by the source IP address. Since we're on VPC number 2, the source would be from EC2 instance number 1. So if we go back to the EC2 instance, we're going to copy the private IP over here. And on this private IP address, we're gonna paste it right inside here. Okay, so it says 0 out of 0, but it's because I made a typo right over here. Make sure we delete this period. And would you look at that? We have one log, and if we open it up, it'll tell you the timestamp as well as the destination IP address, which is this EC2 number 2, 13.103, and the source is 10.0.5.149, which is of course EC2 instance number 1. So let's say I want to SSH into EC2 instance number 2 from EC2 instance number 1. Is VPC flow log going to show that? Let's find out. So if I type in SSH and put in 192.168.13.103, type in yes, permission denied, right? Oh no, that didn't work. Well, it doesn't matter if we SSH or not into it. VPC flow logs should be able to tell us what's going on. So we filter using the same source address from EC2 instance number 1. It should populate with another log. Keep in mind that VPC flow logs do take a minute to show up. So if they don't show up within the first minute, be patient, just wait and spam run query, and eventually you'll see it. Over here, we'll see that the destination is still EC2 number 2. Destination port is 22. And source port is this random number. Keep in mind that it's an ephemeral port, so that's expected. So this is a really powerful tool. VPC flow logs will tell you all the things that you need to know in terms of traffic connectivity. So the last thing that I want to do with you is, what if traffic gets dropped? What's going to happen from there? What does VPC flow logs tell you? Well, if we go on to EC2 instance number 2, and let's modify the security group, right? If we modify this security group, we should be able to drop any kind of packets. So let's say I do not want ICMP packets whatsoever. So we would modify the security group, edit the inbound rule, and remove ICMP and save the rule. So we can confirm over here, if we try to ping it once again, it doesn't work. So I'm gonna leave this running for a minute or so, and we're gonna come back and see on CloudWatch to see if we are seeing accept or reject packets. I'm assuming this is from our previous queries. So in a realistic world situation, you're going to have so many logs. Like there's only 6 right now. Imagine if there's hundreds of logs. How do I know if that packet is getting dropped? All right, let's go ahead and modify this filter. Enter line 5, filter action equals reject. So this is now looking for reject messages from the source of the EC2 instance number 1. And would you look at that? If we filter it now, you'll see action equals reject. Destination is EC2 instance number 2. Source address is from EC2 instance number 1. So now it'll tell you, hey, it got rejected. From a troubleshooting perspective, now you have to think, okay, why did it get rejected? And what you want to do is take a look at 3 different categories: security groups, network ACLs, and route tables. Those are the 3 main culprits whenever it comes to routing issues or connectivity issues in general. So if you're not able to ping a certain EC2 instance for whatever reason, make sure you check the VPC flow logs first, filter it by the source to the destination and vice versa. And then after you take a look at that and it's showing reject messages, make sure you check security groups, network ACLs, and route tables. So I hope this information was helpful to you. Now that you know how to create VPC flow logs, go ahead and start to take a look at your traffic and see what's getting dropped, what's getting accepted, and just play around with the filters. I'm also going to be posting this particular article over here, which tells you what kind of queries can you use in VPC flow logs. It's a super helpful article, and I'm pretty sure you're going to use it at some point. I'll provide this in my description down below. Now that you know how to create VPC flow logs, go ahead and start filtering and have fun with troubleshooting. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, feel free to watch my other videos. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!